In your opinion, what are the points of contact between art, science, and technology?
As human beings, we try and make the world better. And to do that, we need to use different ways of knowing. And that's a slightly different terminology than disciplinary terminology. Art, science, and technology as ways of knowing don't exist in every culture. In some cultures, they divide knowledge up in different ways. So obviously, for about 30, 40 years, I've been involved with this Leonardo organization. And one of our goals has been to connect artists with scientists and engineers and vice versa. So the points of contact change and evolve depending on the problems in the world.
Could you tell what is Leonardo?
So Leonardo was founded in 1967, 68, in the 60s. And at the time, it was a group of people that were trying to use electricity to make art. The museums and galleries told these artists, oh, if you have to plug it in, it cannot be art. Go away. And so they got so upset, they wanted to explain to people why you could make amazing art using, at the time, electricity and light bulbs. When in art museums, you never did that. Yes, you had a light bulb on the ceiling, but there were no plugs in the museum to plug in artworks. The other thing that they were obsessed with is many of them were not living in the country they were born. And they were told, go back to where you belong to show your artwork. You're American, go and show your work in New York. Oh, you're English, go show your work in London. Oh, you're French, you can show your work in Paris. And so after World War II, science had become an international endeavor. Where to bring peace, that scientists and engineers wanted to work across the whole planet. And so this group of artists also wanted to work across the whole planet. So that led to a number of initiatives. One was the Leonardo Journal, where artists could write themselves about the work they did using science and technology. And at the time, art journals did not publish writing by artists. They said, oh, artists are stupid. They know how to make artwork. They don't know how to write. We will not publish your writing. And so Leonardo advocated writing by artists about their own work, just like scientists in science journals write about their own work, even though scientists are not writers. They're scientists. So Leonardo started off, and as I said in your first question, the points of contact have changed. So in the 1990s, I became aware there were about 6 artists using biology to make art, bioart. Nobody wanted to hear about it. Well, Leonardo started documenting and advocating the work of bioartists, Oren Katz and people in Australia, Eduardo Koch. And so your question, I think, is the good news is the Leonardo community changes its focus as the work of artists evolves and focuses on different things. Right now, it's art and climate change. I just had a wonderful phone call with a man called Newton Harrison, who wants to build an ocean sensorium. It would be a room, and you could walk in, and you would hear whether the ocean was happy or not at the moment. Oh, my pollution is getting worse, and there'd be noises that would tell you. And so climate change was not a big topic 50 years ago, but today it is.
Please tell us about your field of research and your project in this field.
Okay, so I worked for 30, 40 years as an editor. And 10 years ago, I was invited to come to Dallas to start an art science lab. And I thought I knew how to do it. Wrong. I knew how to publish about it, but doing it turned out to be a lot more difficult than I thought. How do you get artists and scientists to collaborate? And that's led into collaboration theory, translation studies. How do you translate a concept from science to art or from English to French? And there are all kinds. There's now a group of people that work on the science of team science. How do you get people from very different professions to collaborate together on a difficult problem? And so my approach is I'm now a student again. I have to learn how to work with people in different disciplines, and it's a lot more difficult than you think. Yes, biologists can work with physicists, but because they agree the scientific method is a good method. Artists don't think the scientific method is a good method. We use different methods in the arts. You get the idea. So let me just mention a project in our lab right now. It's called the Data Analytics Teams for Art Science. How do we collect data about ourselves and use computer science and data analytics to understand? And so we're now using data analytics and other computer science methods, data science, to try understand what a group of 30 people in our lab is doing. And obviously with the pandemic, there's a lot of collective anxiety, big surprise. But maybe we can actually use collecting data about ourselves to improve our own selves and the group. What do artists do? They create experiences for people that make them more curious about the world. So maybe this is the time to figure out how 8 billion people can collaborate. Big problem. Let's try.
What do you mean when you talk about space art?
Okay, so we published a book in Leonardo on embodied cognition. We think our brain just functions by itself. No. Depending what you're doing, your brain thinks differently. If you live in a submarine, that's an extreme environment. You only talk to 20 people a day. That's the people inside the submarine. You never see the sunshine. That's called an extreme environment. And some people have psychological breakdowns if they're forced to work in a submarine. As you know, we wrote an article recently on space art as an example. How do people think differently in space than on the ground? You have no gravity. Up and down is a meaningless idea. You need different ideas. And if you want to be creative and innovative, a lot of people think you need to change your context, change the way you do things, work with people that think differently than you. At the beginning of the pandemic, a group of us started meeting every week online. We call ourselves the post-pandemic provocateurs. We don't throw sticks and bombs or occupy the American Capitol building. We throw ideas out to provoke desirable change. And we use some of the theory of Maturana and Varela called autopoiesis. How in a complicated system can you suddenly make something wonderful emerge that invades the whole system? Autopoiesis. Maturana died about 6 months after we had started this project. We designed the group of people. It's 2 men, 2 women. It's 2 old people and 2 young people. There are only 4 of us. And it's been really interesting meeting every week, asking the kind of questions that you're asking me. And one of the questions that came up is democracy has failed, just like racism, anti-racism has failed. How do we reinvent democracy? And a man called Jonathan Keats proposed that we give the right to vote to plants. But we decided that was colonial. We were imposing on plants the way humans think. maybe plants have other ways of doing the equivalent of voting. And so he gave us a job of walking around Dallas with your cell phone camera and taking photos of plants to try and figure out which were happy and which were unhappy. Is happiness a human concept? No. Some plants are dying and some plants are thriving and growing. Try it sometime. Walk around a street and see which plants are happy and which are not. And then, it sounds very academic and joking, but it does make you think about how we impose on plants the way humans think. And it's not as easy as green farming. So the provocation, I think, was stress relief during the pandemic. Like you, I have a number of friends who died of COVID-19 over the last 2 years, and a lot of people who have lost their jobs. But maybe we need to reinvent democracy. How can 8 billion people coexist together and not, then you get depressed about what's going to happen next. I'm working with a Texas judge. He thinks we need to change the legal system because 90% of the evidence is now provided by machines, and you cannot cross-examine a machine. So there he is, and the judge, and the machine says, this person did the crime. Here's a photograph. Well, we now know how easy it is to make fake photographs. And judges don't know how to ask the machine, is that a fake picture or is it really what happened? And so his argument is we need to rethink the legal system. And so when you ask me the points of contact between earth science and technology today, I think one of them is how we rethink democracy. Another is how we rethink the law. And another is how we rethink education. I'm working with a woman in Bangalore, India. They closed down the schools. 60% of the students had no Wi-Fi, and so they had no education for 2 years. The rich people got education online. Yep, that's called digital colonialism. The rich people get educated in India during the pandemic, and the poor people don't. Now, these are big questions. And then it is, how do you modify your own behavior beginning at the end of this conversation? So I'm going to stop there. I'm very interested in learning about the people that you talk to about these things. So yeah, I think earth science and technology is one tripod we can use to solve problems. There are other tripods, not just earth science and technology. And maybe we can reinvent legal systems, reinvent democracy. It might take a little bit of time, but let's think about it.
Roger Malina è un astrofisico ed è stato caporedattore della rivista Leonardo. La rivista Leonardo è stata creata da suo padre, Frank Malina. Roger Malina è anche presidente dell'Observatoire Leonardo des Arts et Technosciences de Parigi. È membro dell'International Academy of Astronautics e membro fondatore della loro commissione sesta sulle attività spaziali e la società. Roger Malina è illustre professore di arti e tecnologia e professore di fisica presso l'Università del Texas a Dallas. È anche direttore di ricerca al CNRS, al Laboratoire d'Astrophysique di Marsiglia.